So when we actually decide to buy a product, it's interesting to know how many things can actually influence our decision and our decision-making process. So this is a little chart that kind of maps out what we're going to talk about in the rest of the chapter about all the kinds of things that can influence the purchase decision process. So we have right in the middle, we have our consumer purchase decision process. We have problem recognition, information search, evaluation of alternatives, purchase decision, and then post-purchase behavior. So we talked about that process. Now, these are the four different types of things that can influence that decision process. We can have the marketing mix influence, we can have social cultural influences, we can have situational influences, and we can have psychological influences. So the first one we're going to look at right now is the situational influences on consumer decision. So we have a little diagram here that kind of shows our behavior and all the things that can have an effect on that behavior. So our purchase task is the reason that we're doing this information search on what alternatives we have, and that might be different if if the purchase is for ourselves or for somebody else or as a gift. Those are the kind of things that can affect that. Next, we have our social surroundings, like who is around us when we make our decision. That can be influential. Are you trying to impress somebody? Are you trying to make somebody happy? Are you trying to keep your kids quiet? Who's around you? Are you trying to be someone important, buying drinks for everybody? What's happening around you at the time you're making that decision? Another thing that can affect our decisions is our physical surroundings. Are we in a crowded store? Not now. Are we in a giant lineup to go make that purchase? That would affect my purchase decision. I'd be like, nope, I'm not standing in that line. But even before, at Christmas time, they play Christmas music, get you in the mood, decorate, get you feeling festive of whatever holiday is coming up. Are those kind of things influencing you when you're out and about? One interesting thing I had heard, a friend of mine, her husband had worked in construction, and when they were building the Sobeys in Stratford, I was really interested to know that in their air duct system, they actually purposely do their air ducts so the smell of the bakery when things are baking goes throughout the store. So you can be on the other side of the store and smell fresh bread or fresh cookies or whatever, which is if you're doing some grocery shopping when you're hungry, that's going to affect your decision-making process as well. Like you might not, that happens every time I go to the grocery store. I go for milk and I come out with $100 worth of stuff because everything's set up so nice, and you walk by and you're like, oh, I need that. That's good sale. And you come out with, $100 worth of things when you only wanted milk. So lots of things can affect our decision-making process to purchase something, right? Temporal effects. What's that mean is the time. What time of day is it? Do you have a lot of time? What kind of time do you have available? Are you in a hurry? Do you have a large amount of time to look around? These kind of things can affect your decisions making process. Is it the end of the day? Are you tired? Is it the morning and you're all set to go and get some things done? All of those kind of things can affect you. And antecedent states. What that means is, what is your mood and what's your available cash? they can kind of be connected. You're going to be pretty cranky if your available cash isn't very high. So, how much cash you have, what kind of mood you're in, are you grumpy, are you happy, or what do you feel like? These are all the things that are going to affect your behaviors and influence your decision when it comes to making purchase decisions. So the next thing we have is psychological influences on our consumer behavior. So things that can affect our behavior is things like motivation and personality, perception, learning, values, beliefs, and attitudes, and lifestyles. So one of the first things in this list here, we have motivation. So this is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So our motivation and personality, that's the first thing in the list of our psychological influences on our consumer behavior. So motivation, the definition here, energizing forces that stimulate behavior and satisfies a need. And so here we have our Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we're looking at why people do some things and not other things. Why do you do the things you do? And, we have consumer needs are the focus of marketing and concept, and marketers try to arouse these needs, which are hierarchical. So this is our hierarchy. So, our psychological needs right at the bottom. So the bottom is our wide. So like that would be our biggest need at the bottom, and this goes up to like, the smallest needs kind of thing. So our biggest needs, we have psychological needs and actually physical needs in some cases are, food, water, shelter, right? So when we look at this need, marketers would look at, a hamburger ad might activate the need for food. Showing pictures of fabulous food would activate your need for food. So that kind of thing. And then, safety needs, your freedom from harm, financial security, your smoke detector or burglar alarm ad might activate that need for safety. And then we have the next need. So they go in level of importance. So our most important at the bottom, then our second is safety, third, social needs, friendship, belonging, love. So, that's where we might see ads that are trying to trigger that, where we see, eHarmony ads, the what do you call it, the e-dating sites, and fragrance ads and that kind of thing, kind of triggering your social needs. Next, we have esteem needs, so status, respect, prestige. At this level, we're advertising probably like, credit cards, fancy cars, like, fancy things that give you a little bit more prestige and bragging rights kind of thing. And up at the very top, we had self-actualization needs, fulfillment of ambitions and hope. We might have advertisements for higher learning, education, trips. We're all imagining trips right now, being able to travel again after this lockdown. But those are the level of the needs in our life that, so marketers know that we all have these needs. So they work on what do they need to do to trigger that need to help influence you to buy their product. Pretty sneaky, right? There's a lot of things involved that you don't think of when you look at a product or an advertisement. So another part of motivation and personality is, we're talking about personality. Person's character traits that influence their behavioral responses. So, that would be, the way people see themselves and how they think others see them. And, how they are going to react to recurring situations. So your personality characteristics kind of reveal things about yourself. So the self concept, actual, how people actually see themselves, ideal, how people would like to see themselves. So these things, you can see the ideal, and reflect that in the products, in the brands that they buy. So that's what, when you're trying to activate that part of a person, you want maybe to show an ideal person, and that person would, maybe buy that product because they want to be like the people in your advertisement. So some of the personality traits too that would affect how people react in a situation, key traits like how assertive someone is, are they introverts or extroverts, how complacent they are, how dominant they are, how aggressive they are. Like, these can all be things that can help marketers figure out your personality response to an advertisement. So perception. This is pretty interesting concept. So perception is the process by which an individual selects, organizes, and interprets information to create a meaningful picture of the world. So selective perception, it's what's known as a process that filters information so that only some is understood or remembered, or even available to the conscious mind. So that's pretty interesting, right? So I have this little game, this little activity, and I want you to try it right now. It might be harder in your own house, but it's kind of interesting. Just give it a try, because you don't always notice everything around you. So I had originally done it at a CPA conference, and she started out our class like this, and it was like, okay, she was like, okay, look around the room and find everything that's blue. And so you're looking around the room and you're looking at everything that's blue, and you're taking notice of everything that's blue, and you're not really seeing anything else because your mind is focusing on what's blue. So then she said for us to close our eyes. And so we closed our eyes, and she said, now picture everything in the room that was red. And I couldn't picture anything in the room that was red. I couldn't remember anything that was red in the room. And when I opened my eyes, the tablecloths were red, the curtains were red. Like, there was so much red in the room that I didn't see because I wasn't looking for red. So that's kind of what selective perception is. It's kind of what you focus on. Do you ever notice that whatever car or color you have, for example, if you have a white car, you notice all the other white cars on the road and think, oh my gosh, there's so many white cars on the road. And that, because that's what you're looking for, right? That's what you see. So selective exposure is like when people pay attention to messages that are consistent with their own attitudes and beliefs and ignore others. So you're going to kind of agree more with and be drawn towards with things you agree with. And you're just going to ignore all the other things because you don't think it's right. So that's selective exposure. Selective comprehension it involves interpreting information so that it's consistent with your attitudes and beliefs. So, do you ever hear, like, you can find evidence on anything to prove your point? So if you have a certain point, you're kind of interpreting everything you see to validate your own point. So that's selective comprehension. And then we have selective retention, which consumers don't remember all the information they have seen, they've heard, they read, even minutes after exposure to that. So that's kind of a problem for marketers, because they know that people don't really notice everything, but they notice things that are familiar to them or mean something to them. So that's their job, is to figure out what is the most meaningful things that they could show their target market that would trigger a response for them. So if, for me, I like horses. So if I'd seen anything with horses in it, I would pay attention. So it's something like that. If there's something that means something to you, or if you have a certain kind of dog, like I have a little Westie. If I seen a commercial that had a Westie in it, I'd pay more attention to it. It would matter to me more. If I seen a commercial with the same kind of vehicle I had, it would matter more. Or you've seen a commercial for somewhere that you have visited or familiar with, or something, things that mean more to you. That's what triggers your response more. So that's kind of interesting to think of that. So there can always also be perceived risks. So you can have a belief that, something has negative consequences. So, for a great example for that now is vaccinations. Are you going to get the COVID vaccination if it's available to you? A lot of people are like, no, I'm scared. It could cause problems. I believe it's risky. So there's a perceived risk to certain people have that, that vaccination might be dangerous to them. So they might stay away from it. So strategies and examples for dealing with a perceived risk about something. So you might obtain a seal of approval, securing endorsements from influential people, provide free trials of the product, provide illustrations of the product, providing warranties and guarantees. So if you have a product, besides the vaccination, there could be other products out there. There might be toys or games or food or beverages or something like that. These are the things that you can do in the market to help get people's approval and try to eliminate the perceived risk that your item is dangerous. So learning, another part of our psychological influences on our consumer behavior is learning. So learning behaviors, they're the result from repeated experiences, reasoning. It's a continuing process. So when we're learning, we have a behavioral response. So it's an automatic response by repeated exposure, right? So if you kind of see things over and over again, so you can see in the learning, all through your years of learning, repetition is the key. You see things over and over again. You repeatedly practice them. Cognitive, you try to make connections. So I often, in most of my courses, and you might hear me in this course, trying to help you make connections with the material to the real world, to your life. And if you can make a connection to the information, you're going to learn more and you're going to retain more about that information if you have a cognitive connection to it. So learning, brand loyalty can also be a big thing too. We often have a perception that the brand is better than the knockoffs. So we might like a certain brand and be loyal to a certain brand all our life. Maybe we grew up using that brand and that kind of thing. So brand loyalty is almost like a learned behavior. So a little more about our learning. So our behavioral learning, we develop automatic responses to a type of situation built up through repeated exposure. So we have a cue, a drive, a response, and reinforcement. So marketer concepts, like they stimulate generalization and discrimination kind of thing. That's kind of your cue. So our cognitive learning, it's repetitive advertising. So they figure if they expose you to the advertising enough, you will remember it, be influenced by it. And you make connections between the ideas simply by observing the outcomes of others' behaviors, adjusting your own, and then brand loyalty, your favorable attitude towards and being consistent purchase of a single brand over time.